welcome to this health talk on balancing your hormones the natural way. So this is something that I'm very passionate about because I see so many people that struggle with hormone imbalances these days. And there's lots of reasons for that, and we're going to go through that. But you know, as always, we're focusing on getting our bodies to be able to function in the best way possible, because hormones are just one more of the signaling molecules that we have in our bodies. So it's very important to make sure that everything is working the right way and to identify the causes that might disrupt the natural working of your body. So let me just... Sorry, I think I need to I might make you co-host, Peter, if that's okay, so that you can let people in as well. Thank you. There we go. Good. Okay, so let's start with what hormones actually are. So they're chemical messengers in your body. So basically, it's a signaling system that is done by multiple organs in your body. So hormones are produced by multiple organs, and it lets your body know that certain processes need to be switched on or switched off. It's also, you know, a communication system so that the body knows whether it's in homeostasis, which is where you want to be. Homeostasis, just a fancy word for balance. And your body regulates its balance with hormones. So there's lots of different types of hormones. In fact, about 50 different hormones that your body can secrete and uses. And all of these are actually made by different organs in the body. So in terms of males and females, we share pretty much all of the endocrine organs, except obviously for the male and female hormones. So this is where some of the hormones are actually produced. So this is like the simple version. So there are glands in our brains that produce hormones. Then also we've got the thyroid, and of course you'll probably be aware of thyroid imbalances because they're very, very common these days. Because your thyroid hormones are to do with your metabolism. So that's why there's a lot of thyroid imbalance diagnosed these days. And I do want to go into that diagnosis versus whether it actually is an imbalance as well. Because we have a very fancy medical system these days that, you know, goes off these little ranges, right? You know, when you have a blood test and it's like, okay, normal range is from this number to this number. But sometimes those numbers are actually manipulated by pharmaceutical companies so that they can have extra sales of their drugs. So, you know, cholesterol is actually one of the biggest ones that is misused, and also vitamin D. If you see normal ranges for different populations around the world, they will be skewed as to what pharmaceutical company is in control in that country as well. So that's something also to keep in mind here. Sometimes an abnormal reading could actually just be a normal function of the body, or the body signaling that something is wrong, but it's not necessarily permanently wrong. Does that make sense, or did I just, yeah. Okay, so let's keep that in mind as well when we do this. So you've got the thyroid and the parathyroid and the thymus gland there as well. And then of course you've got the adrenal cortex, which is where a lot of those hormones are produced that, you know, get us going and go with a stress reaction, which we've been talking about the last few weeks as well. The kidneys and the pancreas, of course, one of the hormones that you'll probably know very well from the last health talks is the pancreas. The hormone, of course, is insulin, and we've been talking about insulin a lot when it comes to fat storage and fat burning. And then, of course, you have the glands in the male and the female sexual organs as well. So just to have a little bit of a look at what hormones do. Some hormones are to do with development and growth of our bodies. When you're talking about human growth hormone, when you're talking about, you know, issues with human growth hormone, then you get an over, you know, like if there is something wrong with that gland, then maybe you get an over or an under production of a hormone like growth hormone. And then, of course, very famously, if you have too much growth hormone, then you get a condition called acromegaly. It's that giantism. You remember James Bond and what's the villain? The guy with the metal teeth. You know, that's the syndrome when you have something wrong with your growth hormone in later life. And then with kids, of course, as well, if you have a growth hormone imbalance, you can either get a kid that gets really big or a kid that doesn't develop properly as well. So that's hormones as well. Metabolism, of course, we were talking about the thyroid, sexual function, reproductive growth and health, cognitive function and mood. And mood is, of course, a massive one when it comes to hormones, because hormonal imbalance is something that most people associate with mood disorders as well. And also maintenance of your body temperature and your thirst as well. There's lots of hormones that will, you know, be produced by the kidneys, of course, in terms of hydration, and that will regulate your thirst. So let's have a look at some of the hormones that are actually secreted by different organs in the body. So in the hypothalamus there, you've got some of the really good feel-good hormones as well there. I think you'll all recognize good old dopamine there, which is our feel-good hormone. And that's also the one that is affected a lot by you know, by drugs that can stimulate the release of dopamine. And when dopamine is released by your body, then you feel really good, you feel really well. So it's not only ingesting things that might trigger that, but also pleasurable experiences will trigger a release of dopamine. And that's usually where addiction stems from as well, right? In terms of things that make you feel good. So it doesn't necessarily need to be something that you ingest. It can also be something pleasurable in terms of your experience as well. Now, the one that I really want to talk about here, because I find this really important, is the pineal gland and the production of melatonin. Melatonin is, of course, our sleep hormone. And this is the hormone that's secreted that tells our body, okay, it's time to go and rest now. And it's when you start to go through all of the stages before you fall asleep. Now, the health of the pineal gland has been linked to situations such as Alzheimer's and also, sorry, I'm having terrible trouble getting words out today, and diabetes. Yeah, so inflammatory diseases might affect the pineal gland, and that might affect melatonin, but it's also in the reverse, right? So sleep deprivation will also hurt the pineal gland. So it works both ways. Problems with the pineal gland can cause sleep deprivation because of the non-production of melatonin, and then obviously in the reverse as well. Non-production of melatonin will also damage the pineal gland as well. And I've been talking to a few people about that sometimes, you know, you might need the help of a little bit of supplementation to keep yourself healthy. We all know that sleep is really important, but we thought it was really important for, you know, rest and repair of our bodies, but it's also actually really necessary for our mental health as well. And it protects us against the degeneration of our brain, which was something that I didn't know before that, but that's really interesting to me. Of course, the thyroid and parathyroid hormones, some of the hormones there, definitely responsible for a lot of metabolism and appetite things. Now the stomach definitely secretes a lot to do with appetite, right? So ghrelin and gastrin. So ghrelin is the hormone that makes you feel hungry. And then we've got leptin, which is the hormone that makes you feel full. So you can have an imbalance in those hormones as well due to usually bad eating habits. And of course, you know, pre-diabetes metabolic syndrome is the cause of a lot of these imbalances as well. But that can cause an imbalance too. And then of course, you've got your IGF, which is your growth factor from the liver. The adrenal glands, of course, that's where you get adrenaline and noradrenaline from, and you guys will recognize those from the hormones that stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. So, you know, stress, adrenal glands, sympathetic nervous system. So keep that in mind as we keep going through. And then, of course, you know, when it comes to the sex organs, you've got glands that secrete hormones that are to do with fertility. So there's an awful lot of things that can go wrong as well. So when we're talking about hormone imbalance, there's 50 different hormones that can be imbalanced. So that's a very complicated system, right? And hormones are just that signaling system in your body, and there's loads of different ones. So it's important to remember that hormone imbalance is a very blanket statement, and there's lots of different imbalances that can occur underneath that. So that's why we have this massively long list of signs of hormonal imbalance, because all of them would be to do with a different secretor organ, right? So weight gain, and this is something that is usually identified as being a problem with the thyroid gland. A lot of people say, you know, I have a problem with my thyroid, but actually it's not only the thyroid hormones that will cause weight gain as well, right? If you have an imbalance of the appetite hormones in your stomach, then you can get weight gain. If you have an issue with the hormones of your ovaries, then you can get what's called polycystic ovary syndrome, which also causes weight gain. And the mechanism for that is actually through insulin. So that, again, is something that is secreted by the pancreas. So all of this is very interconnected as well. Fatigue, which is, you know, a very vague kind of a symptom. I mean, if you do too hard a spin class, right, Dara, you might have a bit of fatigue as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a hormonal imbalance. You know, could have sung too hard in spin and core or something, you know, as we always do. Increased sensitivity to cold or heat can be a symptom. Remember, these are very, very general symptoms and don't necessarily mean that you have a hormone imbalance as well. The other thing that I want to say is, you know, I'm not a doctor, and some of the hormone imbalances are really, really, really serious. So that's not something that you would be looking to treat by yourself. But there are ways that you can make sure that you don't come into a hormonal imbalance, right? So, of course, if you do have a severe hormonal imbalance, then that's definitely something that the medical profession needs to look at. Of course, I always recommend that you go and see a functional medicine doctor, because a functional medicine doctor will look at root causes, not just symptoms. They're not just going to give you something to pep you up if you have fatigue. They're actually going to go and look at the real cause of your fatigue. So functional medicine doctors, whilst also GPs, will look at the body in a different way. So that's something that I highly recommend that you find for yourself, because they're not just looking at little levels in your blood and then prescribing medications just based off that without looking to see what is actually causing that imbalance. Constipation or more frequent bowel movements, dry skin, puffy face, unexplained weight loss, sometimes sudden, and that could be something to do with your adrenal cortex or your thyroid. There's lots of different things that could cause that too. Increased or decreased heart rate, muscle weakness, frequent urination, increased thirst, which is, of course, something that is experienced by people that are suffering from diabetes, of course, as well. It's one of the things that one of the big symptoms. Muscle aches, tenderness and stiffness, pain, stiffness and swelling in your joints, thinning hair or fine brittle hair, increased hunger, depression, decreased sex drive, nervousness, anxiety or irritability, blurred vision, sweating, infertility, which is, you know, like a massive thing. It's just like one little dot here, but it could be caused by a load of different things. A fatty hump between the shoulders, rounded face, and purple or pink stretch marks. So all of those, of course, very generalized symptoms, but all could be part of a syndrome of hormonal imbalance, whether it's one hormone or all of your hormones together. So what are common causes of hormonal imbalance? Well, there's loads of really big diseases here as well. So we would not be dealing with something like that. We'll be looking at different causes, but there are some in here that are really important for us to look at. So diabetes, hypothyroidism, hypo is under, so it's an underactive thyroid. That's usually related to weight gain. Hyperthyroidism is an overactive thyroid, and that is usually related to weight loss. Hypogonadism, so that's an underfunctioning of the sexual glands. Cushing's syndrome, which is a function of the adrenal cortex. So people with Cushing's will have their adrenaline constantly running. So they'll be like really hyper and have like a really red face all the time. It's like they're constantly stressed. Thyroiditis, hyperfunctioning thyroid nodules, hormone therapy, right? You know, most commonly known for treating menopause, that can completely put all of your hormones out of balance simply because you're messing with a natural system. And, you know, menopause is a natural function of the body. So if the body is functioning properly, then you should transition through menopause without too many issues. The problem is because of our lifestyle and because of, you know, a lot of other factors that, you know, happen in our environment too, we are in a situation where that doesn't work very well anymore. And it's because of dietary issues, it's because of lifestyle issues, and it's because of environmental issues as well. And we will go into that later. So tumors, of course, that's like, that's usually when it comes to the adrenal glands or the thyroid or, you know, some of the brain areas. That could be something that's causing a severe hormonal imbalance. Adrenal hyperplasia, eating disorders because of the extremeness of it, because of the messing with hunger hormones, and also, you know, with possible problems like pre-diabetes and metabolic syndrome, because not all eating disorders are about not eating, right? There's lots of disorders like binge eating syndrome that overload your system and your digestive system. So that's also something that can cause problems. Medications, there's lots of medications that will also be hormone disruptors. Chronic stress. Now, this is one of the main ones that we're going to deal with because this is a big dysregulator of hormones. And we'll go into this. You know, when you're constantly, you know, we always talk about sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system states. This is where chronic stress becomes an issue with the hormonal system. Adrenal insufficiency, pituitary tumor, you've got injury or trauma, which sounds really bad, but once again, you know, even a physical trauma to the body will have a hormonal response to it, right? And that can also that can not necessarily be a physical trauma. It could also be an emotional trauma because the body still experiences that in the same way. And then cancer treatments as well, because a lot of cancer treatments are about blocking hormonal signaling so that tumors or cancers don't grow. Okay, so what can we do to balance the hormones naturally? And of course, this is going to be, you can already see that this is going to be in terms of what we've already been talking about in the last, I don't have Cecile here today. Unfortunately, she's on the road today. She'll always tell me how many weeks it's been, but I'm pretty sure that we're creeping up closer to 30 now. So, so here we go. I'll ask her later. Okay. Reduce or eliminate sugar and other food sensitivities. Of course, now we're talking about the hormone insulin and the profound effect that that triggering insulin all the time has on our bodies. When we constantly eat and when we constantly eat very poor sources of carbohydrates, especially, but also, you know, lots of synthetic flavors and artificial colors. All of these things can be disrupting our hormones. And something specifically that has been identified as being really bad with that is things like trans fats, because trans fats can also have a very detrimental effect on our hormones. So it's very necessary to make sure that you're following an ancestral diet. And what I mean by an ancestral diet is something that represents the way that humans evolved. So the foods that we were designed to eat. We weren't designed to eat foods that were made in a laboratory. We weren't designed to eat foods that were laden with pesticides and you know, that keep, you know, that pesticides in general will also disrupt your hormones as well. So it's important to eat something close to what humans were designed to eat. And we've been speaking about that lots in terms of, you know, whole foods, in terms of minimal processing, in terms of, you know, what do you call that? God, I'm really having trouble today. Sorry, guys. Organic, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so as natural as possible. And then the other thing that you need to watch out for, and this can be something that is triggered, is food sensitivities. Now, food sensitivities, we've talked about allergies versus sensitivities before. So we're talking about things that don't give you a really massively strong reaction necessarily, but just something underlying that doesn't sit quite well. Of course, the way that we identify food sensitivities is by doing an elimination diet. So you take a certain substance out of your diet for a number of weeks to see if it makes any difference. But of course, gluten, dairy, nut intolerances, and there's lots of different intolerances as well. Thyroid problems can also stem from having too many cruciferous vegetables as well. So some people who, you know, are in treatment for thyroid issues are told to not take or not to eat too many cruciferous vegetables. And cruciferous vegetables are those ones that I'm always telling everyone to eat as well. So, you know, cabbage, kale, and then a lot of, cauliflower and that kind of thing too. So, they're also things that, your body shouldn't naturally be sensitive to those things, but because of issues in your body, you can become sensitive. And we've been talking about gut health the last few weeks as well, and how gut bacteria help with the signaling systems, telling your body this is okay for your body or this is not okay for your body. And when you have an issue with your gut bacteria, then sometimes you don't have that signaling system and your body doesn't know how to recognize anything, because the gut bacteria and your body work hand in hand for that information to be passed. For a molecule that you've digested to be said, yes, it's okay to absorb that, or no, it's not okay, let it pass through. And gut bacteria are responsible for some of that signaling. So if you have an issue with your gut bacteria, then sometimes you can get a sensitivity because your body doesn't recognize what is being absorbed into it, and then it can start to attack that particle or itself instead. And that's where you get autoimmune diseases from. So, we really do need to have a look at gut health when it comes to this as well. And I think I'll touch on that later too. So elevated cortisol is something that we've been talking about quite a lot as well, but I'm going to touch on that now. So when it comes to balancing your stress levels, like we always say, stress is a necessary thing in the body. It keeps us safe, it keeps us being able to move, it lets us exercise, but it should not be a process that is ongoing in the body. You should not be constantly a little bit stressed all the time. You need to take the time to completely let go and de-stress, to let your body go into a situation where it can go into rest and digest mode. Chronic stress is going to affect lots of different hormones as well, from the sex hormones all the way through to the appetite suppressing hormones, to the hormones that are utilized in sleep and mental health as well. So you need to make sure that you're adequately dealing with stress. And we talk about this every week, right? Stress is only going to make the whole thing worse. And of course, there's always, yoga meditation. We talk about that, deep breathing. We talk about, going outside in nature. But de-stressing is a personal process. Everyone de-stresses in a different way. So, for some people, it might be, putting together a Lego London bus. We all know who that is, right? Here she comes. We love Rebecca's Lego London bus, or doing a puzzle, or going out for coffee with your friends, or it's deeply personal what de-stresses you. So you have to find the things that help you relax and help you be in the moment, and help you let go of something as detrimental to your body as stress at certain times. And it doesn't have to be all the time, right? You just have to, make time to do it every day. I call it self-care. You have to have a time where you're not just pushed along by the world. It's a time where you actually take a little break from the world. Don't let it push you along in the current, and actually come back and take charge of that moment for yourself. So yeah, that is definitely something that will help balance your hormones as well. So, apart from all the other lovely things that de-stressing does to you, that is also really important. Okay, and toxicity. Now, this is something that we've touched on before, but we haven't talked about so much. But there are lots of chemicals in our environment that are known as endocrine disruptors. So they will stop the endocrine system from being able to signal properly. And chemicals are everywhere. You know, even in the air that we breathe, in the surfaces that we touch that have been cleaned with a cleaning solution, you know, to the point where even sometimes our moisturizer or our makeup could be putting chemicals into our system as well that may well be hormone disruptors. So some of the main ones, of course, are bisphenol A, which is BPA. That's the plastic bottle one. So highly recommended that you do not drink too much water or drinks out of plastic bottles, or make sure that the bottle is BPA free, and manufacturers are definitely coming around to that now. But it, you know, in a society where we are here, bottled water is the, you know, is the go-to here. So what can you actually do to stop drinking bottled water? Well, of course, you know, everywhere on every corner is one of those big gallon bottles that you can fill up your bottle with, but those big bottles have been standing outside, and when you heat that plastic, that is when BPA is released into the water. So you can't guarantee in this climate that that plastic bottle has not hit the heat at some point, usually on the back of those trucks, right? So it is something that it's pretty serious to try and get that out of your diet, because, you know, as much as possible, obviously if you're really thirsty and you're on the road, you got to have a bottle there, but your body can work through a certain amount of toxins. But when the only source of water that you're drinking is only from plastic bottles, you need to, you know, come and maybe adjust that, because the period of time that you live here in the Middle East, you know, will also impact on that. I know I've been here for a long time, but, you know, I have a filter installed here and I usually drink out of that. If I buy sparkling water, which I'm a huge fan of, I do buy it in glass bottles as much as possible so that I don't have that. But these days there are lots of manufacturers that will produce plastic bottles that don't have BPA in it. So that's something to look out for. Of course, they're going to charge you extra for it, like they do for everything that is seen as healthier. But hey, you know, it's also quite easy to get a regular filter and just filter your tap water. Reverse osmosis filters, of course, are the gold standard. That's the best that you can get. But I don't have one, actually, just put it through a candle filter. So that's, I mean, that's just the next best thing, right? But it's better than drinking this plastic laden water all the time. So, you know, definitely consideration. Cleaning products as well. Anything with bleach in it is also a hormone disruptor. So, you know, I actually like the smell of bleach. I really like the smell of bleach. Does anyone else like the smell of bleach? I don't know, I like it, like petrol, you know, or in the olden days when they didn't, you know, when you go to a petrol station, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know why. I'll put my hand up to that one. But yeah, I mean, trying to get bleach out of your house. And, you know, in these COVID-19 times, it really is, it's, you know, it's such a conundrum, because you want to make sure that you've disinfected everything, but then again, you don't want to over disinfect anything, because that could be something that, that hurts you more than anything else. So yeah, I mean, making sure that you have natural cleaning products, and they're much more available these days than they used to be. You're not expected to go clean your house with your bottle of vinegar so that everything smells like vinegar, which is kind of gross. Yeah, there are natural cleaning products out there that, that are much less toxic and will disrupt your hormones less. And then, of course, petrochemicals. So petrochemicals are in all of our body products, right? Shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, you know, serum, foundation, lipstick, all of those all of those products that, I mean, if you're me, it's, you know, it's not that bad because, you know, how often do I wear makeup? But, you know, for people that do wear makeup regularly, it is a consideration, you know, try and get natural products that are made with, you know, substances that occur more in nature rather than things that have been created in a lab for you as well. Hopefully then they haven't been, you know, heavily tested on animals either. And there are more conscious products out there these days. But of course, you know, these days you always have to watch out what's marketing and what's actually really good too. So, you know, I know a lot of people that kind of make their own products these days. And that seems to be a growing movement too, because, you know, trying to get toxins out of your environment, because there are so many toxins. You know, I live next to Salam Street, so I'm getting all of the fumes off Salam Street, right, from the traffic, but that's probably not even the worst of things that I'm getting into my body. Things like paint and stuff can be toxic. The cleaning chemicals that are used, even some of the chemicals that exist on our disposable masks and the disposable gloves, right? All of that, just because you put it on your skin doesn't mean that you're not absorbing it. Our skin is one of the biggest absorption organs that we have. So anything that goes on your skin, you need to question it. And, you know, is it from a natural source? So as much as possible, detoxify your environment. Now that's everything that you ingest and everything that you absorb in terms of your skin. And, you know, we've talked about organic food and, you know, what that means, and, you know, genetically modified, not necessarily because of the genetic modification, but also because those crops tend to be sprayed heavily with pesticides. So making sure that you know, look at your list. You remember the Dirty Dozen list that we went through, the top 12 vegetables and fruits that are sprayed the heaviest, and making good choices in the supermarket as to which, you know, which fruits and vegetables have less pesticides and which ones have more pesticides. So yeah, detoxify your environment as much as possible. And you, I mean, you can go to extreme lengths, but a lot of the times, if you want to try and balance your hormones, you could just start looking at changing one thing at a time. Change your bleach-based cleaning product for a natural cleaning product and see what difference that makes. Change your, you know, your non-organic coffee beans, which you drink 4 cups a day of, for an organic version, and see what that means, right? There's lots of different steps that you can take one by one to start slowly detoxifying your environment. Now, knowing that your body is amazing at being able to detoxify, that is what it does for a living. But if you constantly overload it with lots and lots of toxins, then yeah, it's not going to really have a chance. Now, lowering inflammation. I'm not going to go into this that much because we have dealt with this over and over again in the last couple of weeks. And in fact, there is a whole seminar about inflammation there. But that is, of course, looking at your diet, your lifestyle, and then possibly supplementation. And the biggest supplement that we've been talking about in the last how many weeks is taking an omega-3 supplement to deal with inflammation. So that was our famous krill oil, because sometimes fish oil supplements can be full of heavy metals as well. So yeah, all of the things that we've been talking about in terms of inflammation, de-stressing, detoxifying, eating well, making sure that you have periods of time where you don't eat, where you're resting properly as well. And then of course, you know, get great sleep. It is so fundamental to balancing hormones because it's the resting and recuperation of your body. This is where your body can do what it's meant to do. You have to give it a break sometimes. And sleep, not only melatonin production, lots of different hormones, leptin and ghrelin, which are your hunger hormones, are all dependent on getting a good night's sleep. Your adrenaline production is also, if you don't sleep well enough, cortisol goes up, adrenaline goes up. You have more stress in your life because you didn't sleep well. And then you get hungry because you need more energy. So your leptin and ghrelin get out of control, and then that sets off another chain reaction to the point where you can put yourself in danger of getting metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes, and then full-blown diabetes as well, and all of the other diseases that come. So getting great sleep is definitely one of the fundamental ways of doing this. And I know it's something that gets disrupted so quickly. It's also something that gets put on the back burner real fast as well, right? And it's hard to sleep well. It's like, it's like a gamble. Every night when you put your head on the pillow, you just don't know what you're going to get, right? I mean, sometimes I'm like, I'm so tired, so I should sleep well tonight. And then you just end up staring at the ceiling all night, right? It really is. It's a lottery. It really is the good old sleep lottery that you do at night. Yeah. I mean, the nights that I've just been frustrated because I just wanted to get a good night's sleep, and then something is just bugging me and I just can't let it go. So when it comes to getting great sleep, there's loads of things that we can do to try and help us with that. And we've talked about getting a sleep routine before. It's a signal to your body that it's ready, that you should be ready to get to sleep. Of course, having less exposure to screens just before bed. Get TVs out of your bedroom and stuff so that you don't have that issue. You can wear special colored lenses that won't let you absorb certain kinds of light that disrupt the production of melatonin as well. So you can do that. But there are other really, really simple things that we don't think about that might disrupt our sleep. For example, eating too late before you go to bed. Your body's busy with digestion whilst you're trying to rest. No wonder we can't sleep sometimes if we ate late. So putting the biggest gap possible between your last meal and when you go to bed as you possibly can. Looking at the types of foods that you eat before you go to bed as well, non-stimulating foods. So trying to avoid simple carbohydrates late at night, because that is what will pep you up again, right? And we've all done it. When we need to keep going, we reach for something that is a simple carbohydrate because it gives us another boost of energy, but it's not letting our bodies go back into that, okay, it's time to rest now, yawning mode. And of course, gut health. Gut health, once again, is really, really important for a good night's sleep because our neurotransmitters are produced in our gut. So it's important, and they're produced by our gut bacteria. So if we don't look after our gut bacteria, then we don't have the proper neurotransmitters that work in our brain to be able to send the right signals as well. So it's very important to look after your gut health. And we've definitely gone through that lots of times as well, right? Eating live foods, making sure that you don't have too much stress, making sure that you don't eat too much sugar because that can cause an imbalance of different microorganisms in your gut. So that's all important to look at as well. So that's the end of my presentation, I think. Let me see. Yes. Here we go. So then, of course, we always do questions at this point. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, I have a question too, Ma. Why does your Zoom say the room?
I haven't done anything. It'll be Rebecca.
Yeah. Rebecca, have you been messing around with my mum's Zoom? All right, shoot, Ma.
Anyway, you were saying about the cruciferous vegetables with people that are treated for thyroid. Why? What is in those vegetables that make them not suitable for them?
Okay, so look, I mean, actually the jury is out at the moment. So they're not even sure if it's that anymore, but what it was some of those, some of the toxins that are in cruciferous vegetables, because of course plants do contain toxins, because, you know, a plant wants to grow and wants to keep growing and spreading its seeds. So it doesn't want to be eaten all of the time either. So some plants have developed toxins that will slowly poison whatever eats it. And in cruciferous vegetables, there is a toxin that can interfere with the working of the thyroid gland. So okay. that is what they always thought. But, you know, when it comes to all of the good benefits that you get from cruciferous vegetables, you know, sometimes it's easy to say, hey, don't eat cabbage and kale and all of those good things, but take this really toxic substance instead. Yeah. And also there's big questions being thrown about the levels of thyroid stimulating hormone and other thyroid hormones that are produced by the thyroid, what is actually normal and what is not. And the research shows that there are actually about 40% of people that are on thyroid medication that don't actually need it well. Because those levels are set, and then a GP just looks, you know, if the level is out, then we prescribe this. They don't look at why is the level out, what is not functioning in the body properly so that it's doing this, right? And our bodies are just such complex organisms that sometimes it's not even that clear what is the root cause. It might be something completely different. So yeah, I mean, it's very important to start looking at lifestyle and nutrition before you start reaching for medication. Obviously, if you have really bad symptoms, then you can't do that. But if you have the beginning symptoms, then of course, always is preferable is good lifestyle and good nutrition. And going back to an ancestral diet, because if we start throwing things at our body that our body doesn't know what to do with, then no wonder it gets out of kilter.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? I can see like Justina's finger went down. I was just waiting for her little unmute thing to go. But Shri beat you to it. Shoot, Shri.
No, I don't have questions, but I was just wondering because, you know, it makes a lot of sense because, you know, I am suffering with a hypothyroidism, but, you know, at the same time, you mentioned the nodules are hyperactive nodules in thyroid. So I have nodules. So it's like, you know, can they be like together? It's like, because I have like really marginal hypothyroidism, like, you know, 0.1%, 0.01%, which can be cured with food rather than medicine because you don't need it. But at the same time, if it's a nodule and then, you know, then I have an hyperactive nodule, then like, how do I balance it out? So I'm just wondering it. And at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you know, like I'm going to send you a book, Sri, because I just read a book about this, and they were talking about how they operate way too quickly, and that a lot of these, you know, there's a lot of overdiagnosis these days as well because of screenings, and things that would never have been found in years before and would not have necessarily been fatal, right? So and that's the same in terms of thyroid, in terms of things like breast cancer as well is also very overdiagnosed, cervical cancer too. And because we have these massive screening programs, there are countries now, especially European countries, that have stopped the screenings simply because you're more likely to get problems from the radiology and from the rays of the machine than you are from actually suffering from that type of cancer. And they looked at a study to see, does advanced screening actually stop it? And it doesn't. it might actually cause cancer more than what it actually finds and treats. So yeah, I mean, you know, when we know that radiation is so bad for us, then we use radiation to see if there's something wrong with us. And then that radiation could actually be causing something wrong with us as well.
I usually actually wonder about that, because back home, like you don't necessarily go to the doctor and they go straight away for MRI or X-ray. They will just treat, like, you know, like with like some basic medicines to see how it fares, and then only they will go to extreme treatment. Yeah. But here, like you see some form of like a nodule or something, because last week I did a biopsy on my thyroid because they found a nodule. The doctor was saying at the same time, it doesn't look suspicious, but it's better to be safe. So, in your mind, you get that, scary thought, and, you're like, okay, let's get done with
here. The medical profession is a business, right?
Exactly.
I was wondering here. It's not like back home. Back home, it's covered, right? So they're gonna, there better be something really wrong with you before they treat you, right?
Exactly.
But here, it is a business, and never forget that. I mean, I went 2 years ago with a patch on my arm that I thought was suspicious. Now, having grown up in Australia where there's a lot of skin cancer, I'm very sensitive to changes in my skin. I'm also a person that has like a lot of moles on me as well. So I usually get those checked every year. I have some really dodgy looking ones, but the doctor always says they're fine. Mm-hmm. So I had this weird looking patch on my arm, and I don't know, all of you probably don't know, but my mum's just had a few problems with some skin cancers as well. So I'm very sensitive to that. So I went to the doctor, and I went to a clinic, and the doctor looked at my arm and she said, oh yeah, no, better be safe than sorry. I'm going to cut that out. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, we've been made very scared of skin cancer in Australia. It's a huge thing. So I was like, okay, let's get this thing off me because I want it off me. And I was talking to somebody else. I'd made an appointment for like 2 weeks, and I'm talking to someone, and they said, oh girl, you should always get a second opinion here. Always get a second opinion. And I was like, okay. I said, well, who do you recommend? They're like, oh, go to Dr. Berger. He's currently a really good skin specialist here. Everyone always knows him when I say his name anyway. Go to him. So I went to him, and I managed to get, normally he's booked out for months, but I managed to get in an emergency appointment. And he grabs my arm and he goes, that's a small viral infection, grabs the freeze gun, goes, there you go, bye.
Oh my God. That is so true.
They would have cut into my arm for money.
Exactly. I was wondering, why did I do that?
He looked at it for 2 seconds and he knew what it was. I was like, this is shocking. This is really shocking. I would have stitches and all of that recovery and all of the trauma that comes with that to your body as well, because every time your body is cut, it experiences trauma, right? So I was just like, wow, always get a second opinion here. They want to sign you up for whatever operation they can possibly give you.
That's right.
Especially, like, it's really hard to find doctors who are like really being honest. Like, when they tell you, like, you really need it or you don't, it's really hard to find those kind of doctors here. And then we take the doctors back home for granted as well, because we think, they don't prescribe this test, so like they must be bad, but they're not. They're actually not. But, we have this, sense. So we need to be like, like you said, I should have gotten a second opinion as well. Yeah. Instead of, like having pain in my neck for like last 1 week and, still worrying about the test results, I should have gone for that one as well. So, but it makes sense.
I also know, I have a health coaching client. She was operated on and they removed her thyroid. She was here. She didn't have an awful lot of money at the time. And her health insurance, I don't think, was all in order. So the doctor diagnosed her with an issue with her thyroid. And then he was like, oh, I have this friend back home that does these operations. So she flew, and I don't want to name countries or anything like that. She flew to another country and had this operation in a country where they charge much less for medical services, and, you know, possibly has had her thyroid removed for absolutely no good reason. You know, she was struggling with weight, and they said that it was to do with thyroid. But, you know, I've been working with her for a year now. She lost about 30 kilos, and that was simply just by switching to a low carbohydrate diet. So if you implement a low carbohydrate diet with somebody that has severe thyroid issues, then it may not work, but it's worked a dream. So that kind of shows me that, well, maybe it wasn't an issue in the first place, and maybe somebody's just cut her just for financial gain. So yeah, you have to be so careful, ask questions, get second opinions, make sure you see a functional medicine doctor, because their interest is really in finding root causes.
Yeah. Especially like, you know, like the American practitioners, medical practitioners, they are the ones, you know, like who always tend to like tell me to do this and this and that. But, you know, like you said, ultimately from all your talks, one thing I realized was, as long as you go back to the ancestral diet, like you say, everything will be fine. Like, you know, almost everything will be fine. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, look, the body regenerates. We've always been told, you know, once you lose your brain cells, you don't get them back. But actually research now shows that that isn't the case at all. Your body has an amazing propensity to be able to regenerate. So a lot of damage that you cause to the body can be, I'm not going to say 100% reverse, because sometimes we've gone too far, but can definitely improve just by living healthier and looking after your body more. Because the body knows what to do in itself. That's what the body was made to do. It can fix itself if you remove all of the things that are hindering that fixing. So yeah, it's really important. And at some point during your life, you know, maybe you do need to make the decision, okay, the air or all of the plastic bottles here is too toxic for me. Maybe I will have to make a choice to move somewhere where there is less environmental pollution, you know, that will help my body regenerate better. And yeah, that's definitely something that has to be addressed as well. But I think what I'm going to do is thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.